Excellent.
Hey, Liam.
Hi, Jason. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. We're gonna just go through some procedural committee stuff to get started, and then we're gonna start with a conversation with you. So I'll let
Okay.
Counselor-
Sounds good. Sorry, your voice cut in a little bit late. I missed the very beginning of that. Did I miss anything or just?
Yeah, we're gonna just go through some initial committee business, and then we'll
Okay.
start a conversation with you. So just stand
Okay.
by.
Sounds
Yeah.
good.
Are we live?
We're good.
Okay, perfect. So I will go ahead and call today's meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Scarborough Town Council Communications Committee. Today is Thursday, June 22nd, and it is 3:03 p.m. For attendance today, let the record show that myself and Councillor Nick McGee are here and that Councillor Jean Marie Caterina is absent. We have a light agenda today, but we also have a special guest joining us today to discuss our community survey. And so I would like to, if it's okay with everyone, move our agenda items around a little bit to accommodate a discussion of the community survey.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to adjust item 6B with item 4, just swap their locations.
Perfect. I will second that. Any discussion? All those in favor? Those Nick and I are unanimous. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Liam to do some introductions,
Great.
please.
So with us today, we have Jason Murata, who previously led the last community survey we did a few years back. We have a new compilation of counselors for the communications committee who will be working with you, Jason, through this. So we have Councillor April Seither and Nicholas McGee. And then the third counselor who will be joining us for probably future discussions is Jean Marie Caterina. I know Nick wasn't on the council last time we did the survey. April, I don't believe you were either. Jean Marie was, so there is some experience going on. But I thought for today, Jason, if you could just kind of give an overview of the process, maybe an introduction of your background and what you've been doing, and then I think that the idea would be to just kind of do a Q&A and get a plan in place tentatively for next steps.
Okay, sure. So just a little background about myself and the company. I'm Jason Murata. I'm the Vice President and Director of Community Research at ETC Institute. I've worked here for just over 20 years, which is really hard to believe and horrible to say out loud. It's been getting that old. And ETC is a marketing research firm that specializes in conducting community surveys for local governments. And we've been doing this type of work for over 40 years. And in the last 10 years alone, we've conducted surveys in more than 1,000 communities across the country. Almost all of our work is with local governments, town, village, city, county governments. So that's really the type of work that we specialize in, is the statistically valid survey. There are 3 main steps to conducting a statistically valid survey, 3 main phases. The first phase is to design the actual survey instrument, so design the survey questions, and I'll go through each step in more detail in just a second. The second phase is for us to actually administer the survey, and then the third phase is for us to process, analyze the data, and then provide the results. So the first step when it comes to designing the survey, since we've done your survey once before, typically we start by reviewing the last survey we conducted for you, and then decide what changes you want to make. Usually most of the questions stay the same, especially the questions asked on a 5-point scale, satisfaction questions. That way we can measure trends over time. Now, we don't have to do it that way. We can change up some of the questions if you want. And usually each time we'll change a small number of questions, but a lot of them remain the same. So we can measure trends long term. Typically, it takes 3 or 4 drafts until we have a final survey that we're ready to administer. We'll work, back and forth together on that, and then once it's finalized, we'll begin administering the survey to your residents. These surveys are administered to randomly selected residents throughout the town, and it's administered by a combination of mail and online. First, we mail the survey to randomly selected residents throughout the town. That mailed survey also has a link to an online version of the survey, so people have the option of filling out the actual print survey and mailing it back to us, or going online to fill out the survey. Since we've conducted your last survey, we've also started to include a QR code on the envelope that the survey is mailed in, which is just another way that people can fill out the survey. And then we continue administering this survey until we receive at least 600 completed surveys. And if we end up with more than that, then we process and analyze that data. There's no extra cost for that. So once we've done that, then we process, we analyze the data, and then we provide a survey findings report. And last time we presented the results via webinar at a council meeting. So that's just kind of a quick overview. I don't know if anyone has any comments or questions about the process.
I don't. Nick, are you all set?
I'm all set.
No, we're good.
So I guess I would just, so one, I probably should mention this in my opening, but we were overall, I think we're extremely satisfied with what ETC did last time, and full credit to you, Jason. I think that the council was thrilled with the product they got. I think the survey has gotten a lot of airtime over the last few years. I think it's been very informative to the council to kind of understand what's important to the residents. In terms of our timeline this year, what we would ideally like to see is to complete the process and ideally have a report by December-ish timeframe to follow our municipal elections in November. The thought behind that is that the results of this survey will help inform the new council's kind of goals and objectives over the following year. So the rough endpoint that we're shooting for. We have internally started collecting feedback from the council on what items they want to keep from the last survey. So that is underway already. Part of the discussion we'll have today is I'd like to have some discussion. I think last time around we got some good information back on resident sentiment. I don't think that I think there's probably an opportunity this time around to drill a little deeper on some of those issues and better understand what those challenges and sentiments are, particularly as was the issue a few years ago. Just understanding the challenges of growth and sentiment. I think that may be of interest to the council. So I could envision us looking for maybe more expansive questions that provide some context to get some feedback, perhaps. So that's those are some of the, at least from staff standpoint, some of the thoughts on this next iteration of the survey and time.
Okay, yeah, I mean, we can definitely do that. The one thing I would keep in mind is we don't want to make the survey too much longer. So when we add new things, we'll want to either take something out or shorten, an existing questions. The survey we conducted last time, the paper version was about 6.5 pages long. And that's really the preferred length, is that 6 to 7 page range. But a little shorter, always getting even a little better response. So yeah, certainly we can certainly dig deeper, add more specific detailed questions. We just need to be mindful of the overall length of the survey.
Yeah.
And just at a quick glance, like I see last time we asked a question about COVID, we probably don't need to ask this time. So there's things I'm sure that we can come out that, like that one's obvious, but maybe there were other questions that weren't particularly useful last time. So
yeah, and we understand that we need to remove sections to create capacity, because I remember that conversation last time was being mindful of the length and the cost associated with that. And so that will be something I think the council and committee will take under consideration.
Right. Yeah. I think last time one of our earlier drafts was like 8 pages or something. We kind of narrowed it, worked over, a few meetings. Sounds
like Councilor Johnson.
Yeah, which is common. I mean, that happens. For that to happen.
So so I know, Jason, it looks like you're probably looking at this. I know that the counselors have seen this, but this was the survey that we distributed in 2021. And again, at that length, and you're right. I mean, in my notes, COVID questions were certainly an opportunity. We're not looking to do any follow-up on that.
Right.
But I think where we will likely need some assistance is how to frame those more complicated, nuanced questions in a way that generates good information for the council. I think another observation or maybe opportunity this time around would be as we look to formulate questions and broach issues that are important to us, what's going to be actionable on behalf of the council? Asking a question about traffic, clearly no one likes traffic. So do you think traffic is unmanaged, too difficult, too much, whatever? Well, what's going to be actionable out of that answer? And so making sure that our questions are ones that would yield some sort of solution potentially through policy or ordinance or changes. I think having a mind to that would be something, and that's kind of a different level than what's your opinion of town staff or customer service. And that's much more straightforward. So I do think that there's an opportunity here that we should look to really exploit with this survey. So also here, this is what we've kind of compiled for, I think, for some of the initial responses.
Yeah, a few council responses, some minor changes. I'm hearing from you, though, that we shouldn't make too many changes on the benchmark questions, but just wondering if wording on some of them would impact that. And then others are more like bigger picture. I think question 10 is an example of what you were saying, Liam, where it's asking how much on growth and development, much too slow or much too fast, and just how we ask those types of questions. So some are just wording, and then others more about what are we trying to get out of it. But council has started that process, and I think there's a few more voices that need to have input on the first draft.
Another question for the committee is, I think last time around, we certainly reached out to the school and the library to ask if they had questions that they wanted some, kind of the temperature of the community on. Obviously, we did ask some broad questions around prioritizing capital projects. I think we're kind of beyond that at this point. I know that there's also a process around soliciting input or feedback from staff in the way department heads. So I think a question would be, if you want that feedback or input, at what point do you want it after kind of a draft is compiled by the committee and council? Do you want staff kind of comments and input prior to help kind of inform what you put in there? So maybe it all can kind of happen on parallel tracks, but those are kind of other things I think the last time around we did. And again, I think with regard to the benchmark questions, obviously there needs to be some overlap there, and what are the ones we really care about tracking from year to year or survey to survey.
So Jason, in terms of timeline, because we did want to have the results so that the next council will have them kind of to be relevant for their goal setting, which usually takes place, mid-December, those conversations start. And so it would be great to have that presentation and kind of shoot for maybe even for our December meeting, like because we get closer and closer to the holidays and people's bandwidth goes down. But if we were shooting for that first week of December and we work backwards from there, when do we need to kind of be at draft, like ready to go?
So it would be good. So it probably would be good. So if the presentation were early December, it'd probably be good to have the results by the end of November, if not even mid-November. So you have time to look over them before they're presented. So let's just say, mid-November for the results. Once we have the survey questions finalized, it takes us about 2 weeks to prepare the survey for printing and mailing. During that time, we just do things internally to get the survey ready. We have staff pilot test the survey. We format it for printing and mailing. We build that online version of the survey. And then we administer the survey until we reach that goal of at least 600 completed surveys. That typically takes about 4 weeks, but it partially depends on how long it takes the post office to deliver the mail and how quickly residents respond. Within a couple of weeks after that to process and analyze the data. So about 2 months overall, just to be safe timing wise. So it'd be good to have the survey questions finalized by mid-September.
Okay.
That means that'd be mailed at the end of September. We'd administer the survey throughout October into early November, probably, and then process, analyze the data, and you get the report in mid-November.
Okay, great. That feels very doable.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Great.
Any other, I guess, guidance, Jason, for us on, obviously, we're working to go through the last survey and make those suggestions. Any other recommendations for the committee, things to keep in mind, things that'll make your job easier, things we should be looking for?
Nothing that we haven't talked about already. We talked about the length of the survey. Obviously, you want to keep a lot of the questions the same that you can measure, so that you can measure trends from previous surveys, but you don't have to. You can make whatever changes you want. If you have an idea for a question but don't quite know how to word it, I can certainly help you with that. Even if you want to just send me the basic idea or just a real rough draft of the question, we'll certainly help with that. We've probably asked a question similar to that before. So feel free to reach out at any time during this process as you're updating the survey.
In terms of administering the survey, Jason, because residents will ask us how you select who receives the survey and how many people are going to receive the survey this time versus new recipients. Do you guys track that?
So the way it works is we randomly select the households that will receive the survey. So the idea behind that is that every household, it's an equal chance of being selected to receive a survey. That's why it's not biased based on where you live or any type of other demographic or geographic factor. Now we start fresh this time, so whether or not you received the survey last time doesn't impact your chances of getting one this time.
Okay.
So we're not trying to make sure we include or don't include those who participated last time.
And if you recall, last time, every resident had the opportunity to participate in kind of an open survey. I think that's how we characterized it. I presume that that's the case this time around.
Yeah, we could definitely do that again. The typical response rate for the statistically valid survey of this length is about 12 to 15%. So since our goal is 600 surveys, we'll mail the survey to about 4,000 randomly selected households. But then we'll also open the survey up for anyone to fill out. And we'll send you a separate link for that. And you can promote it on your website or through social media. That's what most communities do. And then we process that data separately from the randomly selected households. Yeah.
And I don't know,
Sorry, that one goes out a little bit after, because we don't want anyone who has the statistically valid one in the mail to take the online one instead of, right? It was a few weeks after that we launched it.
Yep, that's exactly right. Yeah. It'd be great if we even could wait until we finish administering the statistically valid survey before opening it up to everyone. But if that gets too tricky timing wise, at least we'd like to wait until people receive the mailed survey and we've made some good progress administering the statistically valid survey before we open it to everyone. So yeah, that's exactly right.
I think again, if memory serves, we had I think we had above average response rate from that. And if memory serves, the open survey data and the statistically valid survey data generally tracked pretty consistently, which was an interesting metric. So I think as much as we can replicate the last process, we'd like to do that because it was so well received by the public and the council and staff. So looks like we received 251 completed surveys from the general public survey, which is available for anyone, which is a really high number. I mean, usually it's less than 100. So that is absolutely on the high end of what we normally get. And a lot of times the priorities are similar between the two surveys, statistically valid and general public.
Oftentimes, the general public survey results tend to skew. The satisfaction ratings typically aren't quite as high as the random sample. But you're right, the priorities are usually pretty similar, usually very similar.
And I remember there was some concern last time about remaining anonymous with the surveys and they don't ask, all the surveys are anonymous, right?
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. Now, when someone takes a survey online, they have to provide their home address when they submit their survey. And we do that for a few reasons. One is to make sure that we're only receiving surveys from town residents. Somebody could share the link with people and then anybody can fill it out. Also make sure that we receive just one completed survey per household. Then it also helps us differentiate those households that we randomly selected to receive the survey versus the general public survey. That will send a separate link for the general public survey, but still checking those addresses is just a way to confirm the report's only based on those we randomly selected.
But I think that I think what part of our message last time too was that town has not provided that identifying information. That's housed at ETC and not accessible to us. I know there are concerns around, residents saying, I'm really unsatisfied, and then fearing some retaliation from the staff or community for that. There's also, to highlight there's an ability to drill down and see geographically how responses trend, which is really, really important. To find out whether the residents in Pine Point have the same sentiment about whatever issue as Higgins Beach. So that was also a really attractive feature that we had.
Yeah, and that's exactly right, Liam, is that we track that information just for verification purposes. We never provide that to anybody, not to a client or sell it or anything like that. In fact, once we process that data, we don't even keep track of it anymore, the specific address or who filled it out. So,
will part of your analysis this time, Jason, include comparing the last survey to this one in terms of like the presentation that we give to the public so that people can see how we're trending without us having to draw comparisons? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Your report will look a lot like the one last time, but there'll be a section this time that includes trends comparing these results to your last survey. So yeah, that'll definitely.
Great. Anything to add, Councilor Gay? Okay. Anything else from staff?
No, I don't think for Jason, I think the other kind of seat, I guess the last seat I just planned with regard to areas and subjects we cover in the survey is looking at, clearly you went through a whole goal setting exercise for this year, which you just reviewed last night. To the degree there are goals that you are curious about the public sentiment about, what direction to go in, is this shared? I think there's probably an opportunity to incorporate some of those ideas into the survey for feedback to either continue those same thematic goals for the next council or, go in a different direction.
Yeah. Okay, great. So Jason, I think we'll probably, have our conversations internally at this point and get feedback. As Allison mentioned, there's a couple of counselors who probably have not had an opportunity to weigh in yet. And then hopefully the next time we talk, it will be with some specifics about how to ask particular questions. And we will just be in contact with you about the best ways to get about that, but we'll keep your parameters in mind and hopefully we'll be able to get draft number 2, version 2 out, relatively quickly. I think this is, we already have a lot here, so.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds like a good plan.
Great.
Well, thank you very much for your time,
Yes, thank
Jason,
you.
and we'll be in touch with any other questions and move through it.
Okay, sounds great. All right, thanks everyone.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Like,
Well, no, I know, you moved it to 4, I know, I saw.
You don't want to vote on that?
Listen,
That's you?
you moved it to 4. I thought you were gonna move it to 3. Jason was here.
I see.
I'm kind of a disaster. It's.
Because it would take us forever to get.
It's- Item number 3 on our agenda today is approval of the minutes from May 11th, 2023. Can I get a motion, please?
I will move to approve those. Do we know second?
Yeah, I'll second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? The vote is unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Moving through our agenda now, we can just quickly go through our general updates that kind of have become platform for us, and or we can go back to our discussion of the agenda, of the survey,
I think we're
because there's 2 6s. And we technically moved our survey discussion, so let's have survey discussion.
Yeah.
Okay. I did not give feedback on the online form because I opened it and then I started and I just figured we were gonna have discussion at comms and that I was definitely gonna be here for it, so I didn't go through. Nick, did you go through?
Good.
You did.
Oh, good job, well done.
And I used Six's library for all of their questions.
Oh, my goodness.
And I just turned them over to you.
Oh my gosh, way ahead of the game, way ahead of the game. So I made a note to myself already to reach out to the school department. Because I do distinctly remember Ken reaching out to me when I was on the board, to make sure that the questions that were asked were in line with what they were hoping to get feedback on. So I will take care of doing that piece. Do you guys want to, Allison, do you want to give us a little bit of the feedback you've received from council so far?
It was 3 counselors and, there was strong alignment on the questions that stayed, everyone agreed on, and then the revised, the ones that were for revision. There was usually agreement around them.
Okay,
I haven't looked too closely at which one is for which one, but the one I was coming back to as an example is like question 10, it's asking about growth, and it's kind of the question of like how is it moving too fast, too slow, but not really like pinpointing at a solution or tangible, like what you would do with that information. So I think those are the types of questions, like the way they're worded, that there was some suggested revisions around.
Yeah.
Others were kind of minor, like it would just be an addition of something about like something that wasn't included that could be included. So I don't know, like when Jason was talking about the benchmark questions, and if it, I don't know if it's worth like adding something that's small, if it's gonna change the benchmark questions for some of them, but I think we should focus based on the notes that we got so far from counselors, focusing on the wording of some of the bigger questions.
So my question would be, how are we going to manufacture these questions in the group setting? As somebody trying their hand at incorporating the thoughts that have been provided? How do we go about?
so I think that one of Liam's strengths is kind of capturing what we're trying to drive at, and then I'm gonna probably ask Liam to contact Jason with an idea and have the survey professionals write the question. And then come back to us with maybe some draft options for, is and then we can take a look at it and say, does this drive towards what we're looking for? Does this hit the mark, or is that not quite what we're looking for?
Because you might even have suggestions about the format, if it's like ranking a few options, or like giving your satisfaction level on multiple, or if it's just a one yes or no question, and it could vary based on what you're asking.
Yeah, no, I don't think we should try and write the questions.
Just wanted to see where the homework was landing.
I'm good at delegating homework.
A lot of the, kind of like the start of the survey, like the satisfaction town services, those types, there wasn't a lot of suggested revisions, but it was mainly when we got to the second half, and I think those are the ones that in 2021 were kind of like the ones that we had generated. So they might have been very specific to that time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just looking through, I'm not sure, anything that references COVID, I don't, library services pre-COVID. But I'm sure the feedback from the library is that they would like to continue to, have a section, I assume. And they, probably are pretty consistent with what they wanted.
Yeah, actually, I think they were looking through what they were suggesting. It looks like to me that they were starting to want to drill down a little bit better on the results, right? So they can help guide them as they make the decisions.
Okay.
I don't know if it was you, Nick, but someone brought up a good point about how you hear information and Facebook is kind of open-ended, like there's a lot of different like sources on Facebook of how you're hearing information, so it might be good to clarify certain things like that.
Okay. And then as we get toward the end of the survey, to Liam's point, some of these questions are probably past peak in terms of capital improvement projects. I think asking questions about those specific projects at this point, we've supported them in various ways through the budget. We now have a completed Parks and Rec comp plan, like, the turf and track project has been contracted, so, things like that. I don't think I think it's gonna be too late to ask any kind of question about the consolidated school. I mean, we're gonna be right up against referendum. And so I think probably the capital improvement section gives us some space if we wanted to, in terms of trying to keep the page number down to 6.5 or 7 pages. We definitely have some space there because there's at least 3 questions there.
Like swapping them with entirely.
Yeah.
different questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 23, if we swap,
Yeah, 23,
25.
25.
and even 24, I guess.
Yeah.
What about 22?
22, I was gonna say, I think it needs to be rephrased. But what are the 3 most significant issues you think Scarborough will face over the next couple of years? It's not what they think we'll be facing, not necessarily what they want us to tackle. Those are 2 different things.
Asking us about our priorities versus what's coming at us is 2 different things.
That's correct. So I'd like to see that reworked.
Like
Yeah.
it might be a significant issue, but not a priority.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to see us at the very least put into draft form some kind of question related to council priorities. I mean, to Liam's point, we generated a lot of goals this year and we're working towards all of them, but we have not specifically collected feedback on whether or not we're doing, whether or not our priorities align with what the community thinks. And I would be willing to bet most of the community doesn't know that the council has, 13 goals that we're working towards, but survey respondents, I'm sure, would be willing to weigh in on whether or not those align with their priorities. So that would be good information to have.
Yeah, that was, you'll notice that there's generally a section that follows every kind of broad open-ended question
Mhm.
where ask for what are your personal priorities? What are your whatever? Because, and I think we saw it in the survey results where someone might say, overall, I'm very dissatisfied with local police protection, but it's not one of my priorities,
Right.
and so it kind of proofs out some of that kind of opinion or overall assessment of something while separating out what the actual individual priority is. And so I think all of that was very intentional in the survey design as well. So certainly keeping that, to your point, Nick, keeping that whenever or incorporating it whenever we can would be important.
I think there's also an opportunity here to help. I mean, we just have the ad hoc community center committee being formed. I would think, I don't know, I've listed before, but having a section in there that says, if the town pursues a community center, what would you like to see? And list a bunch of different options and have them pick their top 5. Because if that ad hoc committee is gonna be meeting and responding by July, right, next year, they could use
Yeah.
6 months of drilled down information saying, the town favors a tennis court and a volleyball room. I mean, for all I know, versus a swimming pool and what we think people want versus what they actually may indicate they want.
I think the only, I think it's a good point, Nick. I think the only thing on that project specifically would be to go back and see what we've done to date. Because I know that there was a survey component with one of those iterations. Again, I'm not, it may very well be valid to incorporate that in. But the parks and master plan, I think, had a statistically valid survey that also touched on community center. So anyway, I think that's something that over the next month, as we're formulating, going back and reviewing that and seeing what the need is to incorporate additional questions on that issue, which will help inform the work of that subcommittee.
Or maybe some of those survey results aren't quite clear, the ones that we have. in
Possible,
hand.
yeah,
Yeah.
very
This might be an
possible, sure,
opportunity to clarify some of it.
sure,
Yeah.
yep.
In terms of going through the sections, to get feedback from current departments, so I mentioned that I'll touch base with the school department. Is it also my responsibility, which is fine if it is, to go to public safety and community services?
I think what I would propose is to maybe go through a similar exercise to what we've asked the council to give department heads the opportunity to say, here's the last survey, what do you like, what do you want to change, what are issues you want to broach or inquire or survey the public on? And then bring that feedback back to you, and you can kind of see where there's alignment with the council, maybe where there's no interest, and make a decision.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. Anything else for today?
So for next month, are we? What's our goal on this? Are we distributing this to department heads? Before next month's meeting?
Yep, so and keep in mind that we're meeting 2 weeks later than we normally do, so.
I think it's the 13th.
Yeah.
That's
right.
July is next meeting. I know that, again, with the initial survey, obviously it required a lot more work to get this up and running off the ground. But I presume that Jason will continue to be, I mean, we had probably 3 or 4, 5 Zoom meetings with him over the course of the start of the process to where we actually got the survey done. To bounce ideas off of him, he's very user friendly, so we could do special meetings as well. Contingent on your schedule to go and say, look, we have this whole, whatever, we have questions, we have concerns, we'd like to see this, what are your thoughts? So I expect he'll be very accessible in that regard.
So for next meeting, are we hoping to have department head responses in hand?
I think we could distribute the similar, maybe.
I think that would be a good, kind of deadline to be able to happen.
Yeah, because I would think the August meeting would be a lot of us. Tweaking before we have.
Yeah, that should almost be a final draft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, we should be really fine tuning that come August. So I think a lot of this work can probably happen offline between the meeting, particularly around that question of, are there questions or subjects to broach related to council goals? I think that's one general question.
Yeah.
And I do think, because again, the question I got the most play was the growth question.
Yeah.
And I think that, and we may need the experts to help us with it, but what questions can we ask to better understand the community sentiment around growth that will give us information that then becomes actionable? Everyone hates traffic. We know they hate traffic. So what do you think about traffic? Probably isn't a real profitable question for us. But is there a solution that's on the horizon we could envision that getting an answer on a question would help us decide what direction to go in?
So like question 9 is about transportation, and it's talking about satisfaction, like getting around, sidewalks, parking. Do you think that is solutions oriented, or should that be something that's asked in a different way? Because that kind of like falls in the category of it could be benchmark, just like services, but it could also be an opportunity to like ask about it in a different way.
That's one that doesn't include is this a priority for you component?
Yeah.
And so maybe that's,
Which items should receive the most emphasis in the next 2 years? If that is a follow.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah, and there may be some, I mean, some regard, there may be some broader questions even if you stacked up all of these. You know. The way to organize these various things that we keep on hearing about and then having them prioritize the big picture list. Is conservation the most important thing? Is transportation, traffic, accessibility, walkability, bike, is that your priority? Is keeping spending down, what is the? Again,
That's
I
what.
wouldn't even begin to know how to organize that or solicit it, but that is something that
But even in there, now that you mentioned it. Keeping taxes low.
I think that there's a question regarding around public officials, budget, fiscal management or I believe.
But I guess when it comes to, what should the council prioritize? Having that be one of the responses along with, putting a community center and keeping taxes low, building a new school, like you can make a list of really big items.
Right.
To get community feedback on what we think we should be focusing.
Well, I think we have the categories already established based on our current council goals. I think we should, I would love to see a question where we kind of get that feedback on what we actually chose to work on this past year. Because those council goals were directly derived from how we interpreted the last iteration of the survey. I mean, that was where we got, right, that's where we got, and some situational necessity.
So we'll solicit some more information with staff. We'll chase down some more responses and input from council. You're gonna obviously go to the school department, you've already gone to the library. Are there any other groups, constituencies that you would like to? I don't think we have a partner.
Sedco's gonna-
We know we have a partner with Sedco on this.
When they say Karen might as well get one of these, she get the level.
She certainly will get as a department head, will be able to, but I don't believe, and I'm not sure what Sedco does for surveying or benchmarking in the business community. I know they're looking at some survey platforms a few years ago, but we certainly can ask for Karen's input about something as well.
I think beyond just asking for revisions, it would be, last time we had a shared Google Doc and it would be helpful to just like. Write in like some potential questions that you want to add to it, even if we don't like narrow it down to all of those, to kind of like have like a brainstorm central place.
Yeah.
Because like. Even like with these notes, it's like a lot of like edits or like thoughtful, like how we could change it, but. It would just be helpful to have a separate sort of document going that's just like, what are some actual questions that we could swap in?
Yeah, and then we could give those directly to Jason and have him
Yeah,
look at them and figure out
Or
what the
once
best
we
way to
see
ask them is, or,
yeah, or once we see the full list of them, then we can kind of be like,
Yeah,
okay, this
yeah.
one and this one.
yeah, that sounds good.
Or maybe we can work on getting a Google Doc or something together for counselors to be, or should it go out to all department heads too, or just central place to keep notes?
Yeah, I think maybe separate platforms.
Okay.
So we have kind of the council feedback and then the thoughts of staff and then this committee can kind of
Yeah.
walk through both and see where there's some alignment. Yep. Nick, forgive me, I thought there was a question on here regarding satisfaction with. Public officials and
I thought there was.
maybe that was something that they,
I think it was buried in, like a subsection somewhere, but it wasn't.
There was, I think
I
John
thought-
had,
thought for sure there was. Oh, overall quality of leadership provided to towns elected officials. But that doesn't get into,
Overall value received for tax dollars.
Right,
But doesn't- It doesn't ask if your priority is to keep your taxes low
Correct.
versus investing in infrastructure versus.
Right.
so I think, as we kind of identified broader issues last time, I think that Jason provided kind of, questions that they've used in the past on that issue as a starting point. So kind of fiscal responsibility and satisfaction of elected leadership or town council. I mean, those are probably some pretty generic questions.
Question 22, what are the three most significant issues you think Scarborough faces? Which I think, again, I would like to reword that. But option 2 is affordability of town services, property taxes.
But saying that's what we're gonna be facing versus this is what I care about most, or.
Agreed. Agreed.
Okay, well, hopefully the first step is to make room for all the new stuff. Right? We have to create.
Yeah, we're gonna have to show some restraint. Okay. So definitely for our July meeting, we'll plan to spend another chunk of time going through staff feedback. We'll lean on council to make sure that they've gotten their feedback in. And then that way we'll have that, and then we can even brainstorm and make sure that if we have questions that we do want to go to the consultant for wording and rework, that we can maybe generate that list at that time too. Okay. All right. So back to our agenda as amended. Item 4 is Counselor Corner articles and topics and authors for July. We had a little bit of a shift for June, and then Jean Marie and I talked, and I agreed to do the July 1st Counselor Corner about the school project. And I'm gonna hold off on getting a draft to you, Allison, until after the Counselor Corner Live.
Okay,
So that I can incorporate some feedback from Counselor Corner Live. But I'll get it to you on Wednesday during the day.
so I had a question too around, last night, the new GMO revisions, passing, and I just wanted to see if there's an opportunity for council for an article on that, or John or Nick had any sort of input, but I know the timing with the school council corner live. And with that being pushed too, so.
I mean, I think it's fine. The feedback that we are getting at the building steering level is that there just hasn't been much engagement around the school. And for us, that's a little bit frustrating to hear, because how can we possibly be putting out more stuff? I feel like we, are trying to engage and help spread communications for that group as much as possible. Admittedly, I haven't written anything, and so I felt like, okay, I've been on the inside of this for a long time, and I probably have a important perspective. But I would be fine if it makes more sense to do something on the GMO revisions for July 1, and then having the school piece be on the 15th. I don't think it makes or breaks the school piece. I just want to make sure that people have relevant dates, and I don't think that anything's happening between July 1st and July 15th that I would necessarily put in my Counselor Corner article.
The GMO doesn't take effect until July 1 anyway, so that might be.
I think it's worthy of an article. I mean, how much work and time went into that? I think the general feeling is it's a far better product, getting at one of the biggest issues in town. And so, again, I agree with the Counselor Sider. I don't think that the 1st or the 15th, one way or the other. I think both of them need some good publicity. But just to go back to your comment, so the part of the frustration is that the kind of town communication platform hasn't been getting enough.
Just know that there just isn't enough information out in general. And so you can only direct people to the website so many times, right? Because they're just, people are either going to go and visit the website or not. And so, I think having more in the leader, and then having, public engagement events where we just try and make ourselves available. But beyond doing that, we don't have any other platforms for reaching people.
I guess I was just gonna ask, has the school committee taken full advantage of their ability to provide their own leader articles?
No.
Okay.
I'd say one thought I have is I'm getting regular updates to include in the newsletter, so there definitely is some prioritization on their end around giving me the updates. It seems like most updates kind of redirect to a meeting that just happened or a community forum that's coming up. And it's not really like about the project or breaking down different ideas or concepts or like just like recapping what happened. It's more just like a link to something that's coming up or something that just happened.
There's not a lot of actual information.
Correct.
Okay.
There's plenty of information on the web.
But that's good
It
feedback.
might be, it might get some more engagement if they're kind of doing more education around what the updates are rather than expecting people to just tune into the meeting.
Gotcha.
I think the problem we have is not anything we can solve, for them, which is we can't give specifics, the stuff that people really want to know.
Yeah.
What's the exact location? How much is it gonna cost me? Like, what's it look like? We don't have any of that. And directing them to watch the process is not really an intention grabber. You know, like, here,
Yeah.
go watch our meeting on how we think we're gonna get to that end result.
Hmm.
We haven't come forward with the end result yet, or what the final sales pitch is. So.
Yeah.
I think that's the challenge you face there.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And until we have all of those details buttoned up, I don't think you're gonna get a lot of traction with that issue.
Yep.
And then it's a double-edged sword, because when it comes to that, they're gonna, it's
How do
gonna
we
seem
get
like
it?
it's the first time hearing about it, or they
But you
don't know
include the
any
link,
We
right?
need this, yes. Okay, so I will touch base with John, about an article for the GMO, and then
Could do it.
I'll see if, yeah,
He's busy enough.
okay, all right, you want to volunteer then?
Yeah,
Okay,
I guess just a general question, do you think a GMO only article, or could it be a GMO update along with some ordinance things, because I think ordinance is getting interesting.
Yeah.
Between short-term rentals, the marijuana.
Marijuana
over,
stuff, yeah.
right? Wondering if that kind of. Just an overall update of things that ordinance is either dealing with or have dealt with, and. I don't know if that would be worth on.
I think it would, I mean, from your perspective, I think that there's room for you to make mention of the other things that ordinance is doing, while you highlight the most, impactful parts of the new GMO. All right, do you want to do that for July 1? Okay, it's, I mean, it's. Yeah, a week and a half.
And because I am gonna be scheduling it out on Thursday, it's a Saturday.
I really need it, man.
So like probably Tuesday or Wednesday. would be ideal.
Right.
And just we will be updating our what's happening page on the GMO.
Yes. I need to dig into the materials just to get the high level and specifics around it too, but I think. So if you're doing an article about ordinance changes in general, or a few of them, then maybe I can complement it with some other GMO specific updates up top, just like in the past. I don't know, I'm still thinking of
I'll
it.
see where the moon takes me. If I've got enough,
Okay.
if I've got enough content with just the
Yeah.
GMO, then.
I think you
we will.
could if you talk about, yeah, like the process, like the background of how it got to that point.
But I think to your suggestion that we should be giving some prominence or awareness to what's going on in the ordinance. I think there are other ways that we can help you do that. Do some social posts around the next ordinance committee meeting and do some highlights. I know that. So I think there are others. So I hear the need. I think that's an appropriate need. I think GMO though is just such a big, this was the topic for, outside, if you take the school away, growth is the big lightning. And this was a huge monumental effort that, hundreds and hundreds of hours went into it. And so I think it deserves its own.
The most shocking thing to me was how quiet it was last night, and I can't tell if that's. We did something good or if we just made everyone upset, so.
And I think you have to take that as a win,
Yeah.
because I think we have a very active, we have a very active constituency. And if they're unhappy with something, and think about how much input and how much opposition the subject of growth has gotten in this town. The fact that second reading of that ordinance is crickets.
Yeah, I was surprised from
I was
From
very
both.
surprised.
the anti-growth factions and from the developers.
Yep.
Nothing, so maybe we struck the right balance, or maybe it's a wait and see thing.
In the absence of direct feedback, taken as.
All right, I can live with that.
Okay, moving through our agenda, just to give a quick recap, item 5 is budget roundtables. Again, I said this last night, I'm really proud of us as a communications and outreach committee that we, are willing to put ourselves out there and make ourselves available. Huge thank you to the finance committee members. John Clucci made himself available for the third one in my absence, which was super appreciated. And again, like we just, even if we get the same 7 or 8 people, I feel like, it helps us to have conversations about priorities. We definitely did our fair share of educating this year. We had several new people who've never attended a budget roundtable come and, just general education about the budget book and the general process. And so I think we shouldn't assume that everybody knows what we're doing and that, we can just be on autopilot. I think it's good every year to set up those same opportunities and educate people like it's their first time, even though we, most of us now have done it a lot of times. So I gave that feedback to finance, and so I hope that whoever is on the the communications committee next year will keep those going. Next item is item 6, which is Counselor Corner Live. I am more than happy to do a video this time and get that to you, Allison, to do a little bit of promotion. Yeah. I'll make something.
Might have been our most liked video on social media. I don't know.
I'll hit you up from my yard again this
Yeah.
time, maybe. Yeah, there was still snow on the ground.
That's what
That was my whole,
That was your whole
I set the camera up and I was like, looks like September in my yard stuff. So I'm happy to do a promotional something for that. As Tom mentioned, I did give the elevator pitch at the GP Cog annual meeting a couple weeks ago. It got really good feedback. Communities we're no different than anyone else, no matter what the size of the community. Elected officials struggle to get feedback from their residents that isn't just, and one-way dialogue, and opening ourselves up to a 2-way dialogue with our residents on topics that are important to them. It's good work. And so I'm happy to keep those going too. I assume John Anderson will be there next Tuesday. I don't know that I've necessarily confirmed that that's happening. But I'm 99% sure, because he did give an update at the building steering committee, reminding everybody that we were having that event on Tuesday. And that is at 6 p.m. at the Public Safety Building. Let's see. Item 7 is Council Outreach Day. So I did poll the council in terms of what they would like to do based on the 3 ideas that they were given. Table work, door-to-door work, and some kind of partnership with a community group were the 3 options I gave everybody. And there was a lot of overlap on doing some table work. People are willing to do any of the 3 projects, and I think if we just felt really passionately and wanted to champion something different, I think we could probably get everybody on board. But just in terms of where everyone's comfort level was and what they where the consensus was, it was definitely around table work. And so there's a couple opportunities for table work coming up. Obviously, I don't think we'll hit the June budget referendum for anything, but we have Summerfest coming up.
Council's gonna be at the polls, right? Or somebody?
I don't know.
Oh,
That's a good question.
There's a table there for if you want it.
Okay, who normally organizes that, Toby, in terms of getting people to, do we have a sign up?
It's usually amongst yourselves.
Okay.
that You communicate as to who wants to do what, and then a lot of times we just put information out.
Okay, so I'm happy to touch base and give John a debrief of our meeting today. I usually do, and just see what he wants to do, if he wants to see if people want to sign up for time slots or whatever. I know that the building steering committee also has a table. And John and I are both on that list as well.
Fine,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I
they
think
call
that's
this.
good. Yeah, unified school. Um,
I have some materials that you guys use the table.
okay,
Yeah,
For
the
signing
cards,
up.
so sign up sheet of emails and like tablecloth with the logo.
awesome. Okay, great. And then public comment is item 8. Do we have anybody online today? Okay, I will go ahead and close public comment, and then future agenda items, will maintain a relatively similar agenda to what we have, just in terms of keeping us all on track for planning of articles and public appearances. And then we'll plan on spending a good chunk of time next time talking about the survey and hopefully getting that to the point of first rough draft, so that everyone can look at it and
Do you still want the item on there to the budget since you're?
No.
Okay, so we'll remove that, thank you.
yeah, thank you. Okay, any other feedback or comments for today? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I will second that.